Shalom. So I want to start this morning by asking a question. All right. So we learned, the major thing in the Parashat is the sending of the spies, and they come back with the report, at least most of them, that although the land is good, the people are strong, and we won't be able to conquer the land. Okay, but I have a question that is not asked, to my knowledge, in the Parashat or in any of the commentaries. Okay. Why was it necessary to send the spies in the first place? Right? Why was it necessary to send the spies in the first place? Yeah, Jake.
I mean, they were slaves for so long, they might not want to be exchanged.
All right, but what does that have to do with spies?
The spies, they're for to see like what the land is like and see how people can be to conquer the area.
Okay, but I mean, here's the problem. I mean, that makes perfect sense, right? I'll get you in a second. Except it's unnecessary, okay? Because first of all, the Torah says, I mean, if Moses had come up with the idea on his own of sending the spies, that would make perfect sense, right? But God tells Moses to send the spies, and it can really be unnecessary because God has already told the people the two things that they need to know. God's already told them it's a good land, and God's already told them you'll be able to conquer it, right? So the information that the spies are seeking, they already know. They already know, right?
That's common knowledge there is God knows this stuff already, but they have to go through the motions of learning to do it themselves because God knows what's going to be their business is commanding duty to them. They're no longer doing this.
All right, but I mean, what?
Make sure God is right. That's one of the they know it's coming.
Okay, so possibly, right? Or sure God told us this, but we want to know from our own observation, right? In which case, I mean, that makes sense, right? I mean, the problem with that is that it shows that the people don't trust God, right? I mean, it does. It shows that the people don't trust God. I mean, the fact of the matter is when they come back, they clearly don't trust God. Because God has said we can conquer the land. And they don't believe that it's possible. Right? But here's what I think. Okay, so after Adam eats from the fruit of the tree of good and evil, right? The tree of knowledge, and he's hiding, and God comes to him and says, Ayek, right? Where are you? Right now, the commentators have a lot to say about this, because if God is omniscient, he knows, right? Why does God have to ask Adam, where are you? He knows where Adam is, right? Why does he ask God? Why does God ask Adam, where are you? Yeah. Adam has the answer, right? It's not a question of like geography, right? It's more a question of like they say in like yeshiva, where are you holding, right? I mean, how, right? Where are you not in a physical sense, but where are you in a spiritual sense? Right? It's the question, where are you, Ayeta, is really a task that God has for the people. Right? And I think this is a test also, right? This is a test also to see whether the people are ready to go into the land, and that's, Jacob, where you're correct, right? Because the idea is you can't go from slavery to independence overnight, right? It's a process. It's a process. And, and we know that they failed this test, right? Because they said, oh, we're too weak, we can't conquer, right? And first of all, it shows a lack of faith in God. But beyond that, it's counterfactual, right? I mean, what we read in Shelach, right? All the peoples of the nation are quaking, right? Steel ohes Yoshvei Kolai, right? Fear takes over, fear captures the inhabitants of Philistia, right? The people are terrified. And the very end of the Haftorah, okay, granted that's 40 years later, but it's the same thing, right? Rahab says to the two spies, all of the inhabitants of the land are quaking before them, right? So the people are, in fact, the people of the land are terrified. They're not strong, right? I mean, I personally love what Rocky says about this, right? That the people say, we saw that the cities are well fortified, right? We saw that the cities are well fortified, and therefore that means the people are strong. And Rashi says, no, it means the people are weak, right? Because you don't have to build big walls to protect yourself if you're strong, right? If you're strong. The need to build walls, I mean, you may strut around and say, I'm the most bigly macho guy in the world, and I'm going to build the most bigly wall, right? But if you need to build the most bigly wall, you're not macho at all. You're terrible, right? I'm not referring to any, current people that we know. But that's, and if you don't like it, take it up with Drasha, okay? Practice your medieval French and take it up with Drasha, because that's what he says. Building big walls is a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of strength, right? And I want to say that Rashi's comment is an argument for conservative and modern Orthodox Judaism. Because, right, we don't need to build metaphorical walls around ourselves to protect ourselves from other influence, right? We maintain that you can be 100% Jewish, right? And live a fully Jewish life, and also be a full participant in American society. That you don't have to choose one or the other. You can be 100% Jewish and 100% American, right? And if you need to build walls around your community, right? Why do you need to build a wall around your community? Because you are afraid that your kids will not come out intact in an encounter with American society, right? And that's why you have people, look, I grew up in the next neighborhood over, so I know this, right? People who are third and fourth generations Americans in Borough Park, who can barely speak English, right? Who don't know math, don't know history, don't know science. If they leave their community, can't make a living, can't function in American society, right? And that's not a sign of strength, it's a sign of weakness, because if you're confident in your kids and you're confident in the education that you gave them, and you're confident in the grounding that you gave them, right, you won't be afraid to have them encounter American society, right? And I'm talking, look, I'm not saying, don't be judicious, okay? There's a lot of bad stuff out there on streaming services, and there's a lot of, if you want to say to your kids, I don't want you to have TikTok, and I want to be able to have access to your phone to know what you're doing and blah, 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 to protect you. I think that that's fine, right? I mean, easy for me to say, I've never been a parent of a teenager, right? And, Berkeley came into my life when she was in her early 20s, TikTok, and these things didn't exist yet, so it's easy for me to say. Right, I'm not saying, throw open the gates and let the Mongol hordes march in, right? But at the same time, we don't need to protect our kids from everything about American society, right? And the fact of the matter is that, American society is incredibly hospitable to Jews, right? And yes, is there rising anti-Semitism? There is rising anti-Semitism. Is it a fringe phenomenon? It's still a fringe phenomenon, right? It is the fringe of the far left, and it is the fringe of the far right. And the vast majority of the American spectrum, right or left, condemn it. It's about whatever, right? But there's no argument, and American society is so incredibly hospitable. I mean, if you want to look, just as an example, right? I mean, Kelly and I, it just popped into my head, within the last few days, watched 2 stand-up specials on, I think they were both on Netflix, right? Very funny. One by Amy Schumer and one by Sarah Silverman. Okay, and in previous generations, people like this were in many cases really kind of just marginally Jewish, right? But Amy Schumer's special and Sarah Silverman's special, and by the way, I mean, I'm not endorsing everything that they said, right? And I'm not necessarily telling you should watch them. I mean, there's a lot of vulgarity in them, okay? But they're also really funny, and they're also really Jewish. Like, the Jewish bit of these people is like central to their comedy, right? And I mean, Sarah Silverman, her sister's a rabbi, right? Her sister's a rabbi and lives in Israel, by the way, mentions, her rabbi sister throughout this spectrum, right? And we have, I mean, the marvelous Mrs. Maisel, right? And I mean, what a richly Jewish show. And mentioning Sarah Silverman, right? Sarah Silverman raised the argument a few months ago that actors who are not Jewish should not play Jews, right? And so you have, Rachel Brosnahan, not Jewish, right? Tony Shalhoub, not Jewish. Maren Hinkle, not Jewish. In my opinion, that's why it's called acting, right? That's why it's called acting, okay? I mean, you don't actually, have to be massive and have green skin to play the Hulk, right? And you don't have to be able to shoot the nest out of your hand to play the spot. It's called acting, right? And to me, the flip side of the argument that only Jews should play Jewish characters is that Jews should only play Jews, right? And you know, for a long time, right, African Americans were very limited in the role they could play, right? Because everybody knows that mermaids are white, right? And so an African American actress can't play mermaid with mermaid. Right? It's ridiculous, right? But you know, if we are aiming for, you know, a multicultural society, then personally, I mean, I don't think that you have to be Jewish to play a Jew, but you have to be able to do it well. You have to be able to do it, you know, sympathetically, right? But, you know, I want to go back a few years in my own career when I was working for Hillel. Right, the regional director of Hillel in this area at the time was a rabbi by the name of Sam Thick. And Sam started working for Hillel like in the late 50s or early 60s, right? And he and if you remember the hostage crisis that took place in the district, at the district building, in the B'nai B'rith building, Sam was one of the hostages. I really didn't know that until I was watching a TV show about it, and all of a sudden Sam was being interviewed about his experiences. But Sam said that to us, you know, when he started working for Hillel, there were all kinds of workshops and monographs and whatever, how to work with the self-hating Jew, right? And that category has disappeared. Yes, there are Jews who, you know, may be anti-Israel, may have positions on Israel that we don't like. Okay, but they do it from a place of Jewish, right? And their own sense of what Jewish values are. We disagree with that, but they're not self-hating, they're just, in my opinion, they're just wrong. Okay, but they don't hide their Jewishness and they don't try to avoid, you know, and we actually, I mean, as much as there are, you know, relatively low levels of Jewish literacy in our society and Jewish observance in our society, most young American Jews are very proud to be Jewish. They're very proud, they're very affirmative. They like being Jewish. They don't just necessarily know, you know, that how to fill that time with content, right? And there is, I mean, I really believe that there is a potential for Jewish Renaissance in our society, and that Jewish Renaissance will come not from people who build walls around themselves, but from people who are unafraid and participate in American life as Jews fully, with all of their Jewishness intact and brought to the fore. Shabbat Shalom. And we continue with